Welcome to the Darkstream, VoxDay, voxday.net, and unauthorized.tv. I don't know about you, but I am a little bit tired. I watched the Super Bowl last night, which was a little bit more of a commitment if you're living in Europe, because you have to stay up even later than I normally do. But it's all good. It's actually quite a good game. I was, I don't know, mildly disappointed, though not terribly surprised by the result. And not because of the scripting or anything. In fact, I'm going to cite some evidence to point out that I think the script was actually rather different than it was intended to be, and also to explain how I think that it didn't go as planned. So anyhow, but we'll get to that. Someone said, is it just me or are streams not posted to unauthorized anymore? They will be. I'll get 2 of them posted a day until we're caught up. I think there's 4 ahead of this one that need to be posted. I've just been very busy. As everybody who knows me personally is very well aware, I'm not very reliable when it comes to doing pretty much anything when I am in the process of trying to finish a book. If you followed Sigma Game at all, you know that there's a tremendous amount of content and a tremendous amount of interest in that topic, and I've been working on that. I'm actually hoping to finish what could have been, get to what could have been the end by, let's see, oh, hang on a second. I'm going to have to pause this. I got a dog who's creating problems, so just a moment. We will be right back. All right, sorry about that. We're back. We have we had a princess who, for whatever reason, was unhappy, and so go lay down. Jeez, it's not like I didn't take them out at the time. You know what I mean? Anyhow, West by Godbear says Sigma Game has been great. The Barbie post was great. Hello. Now the other one's down here. Yeah, it's okay. Oh, she needed a drink, of course. Anyhow, one of the hazards of streaming late at night in a house full of dogs. Anyhow, what we were talking about, okay, getting caught up. Yeah, so the streams are going to get caught up on there. But you know, there's been a lot of talk, an increasing amount of talk this year about the Super Bowl and about the NFL and the scripting and all that sort of stuff. And as is usually the case, most of the talk is a tremendous amount of nonsense. You know, all this, I mean, the funny thing is, all the people talking about Taylor Swift and talking about how NFL fans are angry and all this sort of thing, it's total nonsense. In fact, people who are, the usual gammas who hate sports ball and all that sort of thing, um, they're the ones who are talking about Taylor Swift, you know, or to a lesser extent some of the various scripting theories. I mean, there's it when people do see things like um, the final score of a game posted long before the game takes place, or I thought the colors of the logos were pretty interesting because um, for like the last 3 years or 4 years it backdated correctly. Didn't work so well this year because the colors were clearly um, you know a purple team and a red team, which of course if Kirk Cousins hadn't already been blown out his Achilles, uh, we might have had some hope for the Vikings fans there, right? But here's the thing: at the beginning of the season, before the season even began, you know, there were many people, including myself, who expected a Kansas City 49ers Super Bowl. Not because we were reading the tea leaves, not because we were engaging in harospectry or horoscopy, interpreting the entrails, not because we were read up on the logo theory, but because those were two of the obviously best teams in the league. The NFL is nowhere nearly as predictable as, say, the English Premiership or, God forbid, the the German league, the Bundesliga. It's not very difficult to predict who's going to win the Bundesliga because Bayern Munich wins it 9 out of 10 years. It's not even a contest. It's not difficult to figure out who's going to win La Liga because it's either going to be Barcelona or Real Madrid. If you want to know what real competition looks like, real, open, honest competition that had has no limits to the amount of money that the teams can spend. True, genuine competition. You know what that looks like? It looks like Manchester City, fighting off Liverpool and Arsenal to win the league every year. We know this from economics. If you've studied standard economics, in the market there are typically 3 primary players in the end. You've got the big 2 and then the distant third. And it's really remarkable how readily that plays out. In Serie A, you have Juventus, you have Inter Milan, and you have AC Milan. Those are the big 3 in the Italian league. Occasionally you've got Roma popping up. Occasionally you've got Napoli popping up. But that's something that happens like once every 20, 30 years for those teams. And so the point is that the NFL does focus on entertainment. That's true. It's been settled in court, right? But what they're doing with the scripting is the exact opposite of what most people believe they're doing. The NFL is actually very, very focused on not letting a team become dominant, not permitting a team to completely run over the league for years. New England was a complete anomaly, and it lasted longer than anybody expected, and almost certainly longer than the league wanted. there's nothing better that the league likes than balance. In fact, you'll sometimes see sports writers use that word almost like it's a swear word because they don't like the balance. They like having good guys and bad guys that they can point to. Yeah, for example, hence the Super Bowl winner getting the last draft pick. And even more importantly than that, the draft is important, especially because of the limited number of quality quarterbacks. But as we've seen with Brock Purdy, there's always exceptions to that rule. But the most important thing is the salary cap. Ladumba points out Bayern, which means Bayern Munich. Bayern has an 11-year streak, and when Harry Kane arrives, Leverkusen may become invincible this season. What? Harry Kane's already Bayern Leverkusen, yeah. No, but he's with isn't he with Bayern Munich? And I thought Borussia Dortmund snuck a title in there somewhere. I don't know. I don't follow the Bundesliga, in part because it's not interesting. We always know who's going to win. They don't have enough. Yeah, he's with Bayern Munich. That's what I thought. So they took, as if Bayern Munich didn't have enough of an advantage, they took one of the top strikers from Tottenham Hotspur, one of the second-tier English teams, and brought him in. I think mostly because he was interested because he wanted to win a title somewhere. And so now they've got one of the best. He's tearing it. He's absolutely tearing it up. And so, when you look at the complete lack of competitive balance in some of the most successful sports leagues in the world, you need to reframe your consideration of what the league's doing, how it works, etc., etc. Larry Dynamite Bear sends a super chat and says, when the 49ers missed the PAT, I was sure it was going to go into overtime. I wasn't sure it was going to go into overtime. I was pretty sure the 49ers were going to lose. And again, not because of the conventional scripting, but because of the way that the whole thing, the way that the games usually play out. Now, what do we look for if we're looking for evidence of what I call the thumb on the scale? Because what I do believe takes place is I do believe they put a thumb on the scale. And, jeez, the dog's going. Hang on a second. I will be back. All right, we're back again. So, anyhow, yeah, the dogs are being a pain in the ass tonight. One of them in particular. So, anyhow, so we're talking about the thumb on the scale. So, when you're watching a game, there's no question that there is some amount of influence, and it's usually done, I believe, through the officials. When and the way that you can usually tell is number one, who they are calling more penalties on early. It's especially noticeable later in the game when they start to uh, make obviously terrible calls in critical situations. So where do we see that? We saw one, and we definitely saw one. Can anyone tell me what the telltale call was? And this is why I'm pointing out the fact that I think that the way that everybody was going on about how the whole script was to, uh, you know, put Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce center stage, um, or prevent a young white Christian from becoming the face of the league, etc., just wasn't legitimate. West by God, Bear got it. Defensive holding on 3rd and long. That's correct. It was 3rd and 13 in overtime. And, instead of just letting them play at the end like they usually do, there's suddenly a defensive holding call, which gave them an automatic first down, thereby keeping San Francisco in the game. And so if you look at the things that killed San Francisco, what sort of things killed San Francisco? They were the kind of things that couldn't reasonably be scripted. The ball hitting the back leg of a punt return blocker who wasn't looking. That's right. Once that happened, I thought for sure the 49ers were going to win. I think that that's what the script, to the extent that there was a script, actually was. I don't think, what possible benefit is there to a third Kansas City Chiefs title? What's the benefit there? How does that make the league more interesting? How does that sell more tickets and keep their ratings up? No, Sam, that doesn't make, Sam says keep it close. It was overtime, Sam. It literally couldn't have been any closer. The score was 22 to 22. They'd already achieved their objective to keep it close. Was it not an obvious hold call? It was a 6 out of 10. He basically put his arm out as the guy was coming off the line. I mean, was it a clear flag? Yes. But did they really want to put it out? No. And so Sam says the league has a three-peat to talk about all next season. It doesn't need that. I don't think people understand how completely, totally, and utterly dominant the NFL is when it comes to TV ratings. The only thing that really concerned them was when the ratings began to fall in the aftermath of the BLM stuff. And so they quickly cleaned up their act. There's still a few remnants of it. You've got the "it takes all of us" and "end racism" on the backs of the helmets if the players want. But they've buried all the things that the fans don't like. That's why you don't see the and I agree. Dan says they don't want another Patriot situation. Yeah, the NFL doesn't like having an overly dominant team. I think that the two teams that they wanted to succeed this year, and I do believe that they have teams that they favor. And we know this because if you want to know what teams they favor, it's very, very simple. Look at what teams are playing in the nationally televised games. So the teams that they were obviously favoring last year, or especially if there's no particular reason to, like for example, if, obviously a Super Bowl champion is going to get more games, right? The team with the MVP going to get more games. But there's also the storyline team. Who can remember what the storyline team was at the beginning of this season? What team got an absolutely egregious number of nationally televised games compared to everybody else? I mean, it was absolutely absurd. While you guys are thinking about that, not the Eagles. No, in fact, the Eagles' meltdown after being in the Super Bowl was pretty incredible. You know, a lot of people picked them. Larry Dynamite Bear says Buffalo and Eagles. It was Buffalo in part, but that's not the main one. That's not the egregious one. You guys are all forgetting this because the team didn't even make the playoffs. It was the Jets, the New York Jets. They had something like 6 nationally televised games, despite the fact that they were not even in they weren't even favored to come in second in their division. I don't think. you know, Everybody thought Miami. I mean, actually, they weren't favored to come in. They'd finished third before, behind the Dolphins and the Bills, but because they had Aaron Rodgers, and because Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback and is getting towards the end of his career, I think that they were actually hoping for the Jets. But that went flying out the window after Aaron Rodgers got hurt. And that's another reason why the whole idea that they're all actors and it's very closely scripted and all that stuff is complete and total nonsense. Because there's too many possibilities for injury. Kyle Shanahan even says it's very difficult because they plan for everything. They try to plan for everything. And then they go out there and what they think is going to work doesn't work. And they find opportunities that start working. And he said, the game is always different than you expect it's going to be. Which is true in any actual sport. Carnaby says, I know way too many guys 50 plus with blown Achilles. I'm scared to get out of bed in the morning. Well, I mean, look at what happened to Ty Greenlaw, which, is another argument for the idea that the 49ers were supposed to win. Nobody, and I mean nobody, anticipated one of the top San Francisco defenders injuring himself, being overexcited and running onto the field. It was just painful to watch that. And if you saw the way that the 49ers came out, I mean, they were amped up. Absolutely amped up. Because if we can observe which side which team the referees appear to be favoring, you have to believe the players and the coaches can sense it too. I think that the 49ers sensed it. In fact, I even was thinking in the first half, Andy Reid didn't really look into the game at all. He just seemed to be in this mode of, well, it's not our year, so, I'm sure he picked it up too. But then the uncontrollable things start happening. Christian McCaffrey fumbles the ball. which is much, much more unlikely than Pacheco fumbling the ball, on the subsequent drive. I don't know if it's like the immediately subsequent drive, but you know, in a similar situation in the red zone, McCaffrey almost never fumbles the ball, but it was a good strip, and so um, there are certain things that are very, very difficult to not only very difficult to fake, but really difficult to even potentially anticipate. And nobody would have anticipated someone like Greenlaw, blowing out his Achilles or whatever it is that he did, um, running out on the field. Um, and so I think that with no disrespect to the conspiracy theorists, because I do believe there is some level of league intervention in this stuff. I just think that because too many of the people who are prone to analyzing this stuff, number one, don't play sports, number two, don't like sports, and number three, don't know anything about the way that the NFL operates or what its actual goals are. You know, I mean, do they try to keep the games close? Yes, 100%. I don't think it's an accident that in the aftermath of those Super Bowls from the 80s, when NFC teams were regularly curb stomping AFC games, um, it's obvious that they take steps to try to keep things close. Matty Ice says Super Bowl 49 was the closest I've come to thinking the whole thing was scripted. Well, even there, though, it was 49 the 49ers Ravens, because that's the Super Bowl where I thought the whole thing was just um, where the league was intervening as blatantly as it ever has. Um, because what was happening was that the 49ers, I mean, it looked like a Super Bowl from the 80s. The 49ers were just, you know, um, no, sorry, it was the Ravens. The Ravens were just absolutely crushing the 49ers. No, I totally disagree. Um, Super Bowl was the the Seahawks passed instead of running. Um, did you even watch the game last night? You know, that's the person. Um, I mean, first of all, pass teams passing instead of running has been a disease in the NFL for the last 20 years. You um, because it's difficult to be disciplined, um, and so the teams get nervous, coaches get nervous, and um, it's I think that was just a moment of cowardice. And in fact, what a lot of people don't realize about um, that particular play and that particular game was Bill Belichick did something very, very strange there. And what he did was, and I mean, his nobody even realized what was happening. In fact, his assistant coaches, Patricia and who's it? The offensive guy, Raiders coach, got fired. Anyhow, they were freaking out because the clock is ticking, and Seattle was expecting New England to call a timeout, and so and Belichick didn't call the timeout. And later, what he explained that he was trying to do is he was trying to put the pressure on the Seahawks, because they weren't making changes to they couldn't make the changes to their offense unless there was a break in the action, which they expected. I mean, obviously they could have if they hadn't been expecting him to call timeout, but the normal thing to do in that situation is call timeout, get your best defense in there, et cetera, et cetera. And anyhow, Belichick refused to call the timeout. He put all the pressure on Pete Carroll, and Pete Carroll, as Belichick hoped, choked. You know, Pete Carroll said it was a time management pass. Yeah, exactly. He basically just did the unexpected, which messed with Pete Carroll's head. Pete Carroll makes the wrong call. I mean, look at what we saw last night. Or it's not Mike. Kyle Shanahan choked last night. You know, he knew and said before the game, we need to make sure we don't get away from the run, and they did a pretty good job of it. But what does Kyle Shanahan do when he gets under pressure? For most coaches, running the ball scares them more than passing the ball does. Because number one, when you run the ball, the clock continues to run. And number two, there's always the fear that a lineman's going to break through and blow it up. The guy's going to get stoned in the backfield, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a pattern that you can see. Shanahan did it as an offensive coordinator when Atlanta had the big lead, 28-10, and blew it and was beaten by the Patriots. He kept passing to try to kill off the game, win the game. Veritas said the fumble in the first half probably got into his head. I have no doubt that it did. And also the Chiefs were doing a pretty good job of shutting down the run, keeping it in check. But he didn't stick with it enough. They needed to, especially after Mahomes threw that interception, what they needed to do is smash it down Kansas City's throat, score the touchdown, take control of the game. But he got nervous. What does he call? 3 passes, 3 and out. They get the ball back. 3 passes, 3 and out. And that was the point at which I thought, wow, the 49ers might be in trouble here, even with what looks like the refs favoring them. Because remember, Kansas City got 2 big personal foul penalties, both legitimate penalties to be fair, but if a team is favored by the refs, those calls are usually not made against them. So that was why I was pretty sure that San Francisco was the favored team, not Kansas City. And also, if you look at the fact that Lamar Jackson got the MVP, if you look at that whole logo theory thing, and if you just look at the way that they love Lamar Jackson, despite the fact that he's a very idiosyncratic quarterback, and one who really is only a front runner. He's a very good quarterback, but he's limited in a way that no other quarterback of his supposed caliber is limited. And so, I think that they wanted a Baltimore San Francisco Super Bowl, but they didn't get it. Because Baltimore just couldn't deliver. So In the same way, um, San Francisco just couldn't deliver. Now, there are certain things that do make me occasionally wonder if there's something deeper going on. But, you know, it's important to think about how it could be done before you think that, oh, well, that's definitely happening. Um, I get very tired of it when people are like, they're all actors. Like, really? You know how bad actors are. You know how bad actors can be if you just even see a B movie. There's not that many good actors out there. When you see these crisis actors and stuff, they're just ridiculous. You watch them, you're like, I don't believe anything you're saying. When would when would when would 70 some young men learn to act at the universities where they don't go to their classes anyhow? I mean, unlike most people, I've been an NCAA Division One athlete. You train a lot. You don't. I mean, even at a low level, uh, team in a unimportant sport, the amount of time that you spend training, I mean, it precludes you from even having much of a life. You know, they're not they're not all learning how to be really good actors. Pro Dynamite Bear has a good point. Pro wrestling is two guys and they look fake. How would they get 22 guys on a field to do it? Precisely. You know, I mean, people talk about the big Patriots comeback against Atlanta and say, oh, that they fake that. They just really wanted to come back. I'm like, if you saw some of the catches that those players were making, I mean, totally impossible. Absolutely, totally, and utterly impossible. No chance. Um, Now, what is theoretically possible and did make me wonder is, you know, there sometimes do appear to be a few coaches and a few players who might be read in, if you know what I mean. When you look at the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings, the Patrick Mahomes, um, they seem to uh, they seem to be blessed by the league in a way that goes beyond just their skill. There's a fundamental difference distinguishing the way that great quarterbacks like Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers are treated, and the way that Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes are treated. You know, Brett Favre, or Tom Brady would never have been allowed to have been hit the way that Brett Favre was in the NFC Championship game, and it was pretty clear that the league really wanted New Orleans to go to the Super Bowl and win, in light of what had been happening in New Orleans with the hurricane and all that. And so um, but one thing that did make me wonder about it is when I see a coach sticking to something that obviously isn't working. For example, um, why Purdy was struggling with the blitz all night. Steve Spagnuolo is known for being pretty aggressive on the blitzing. Why did they not adjust to that? Why were they not properly prepared for that? That I wondered about. Um, I also wondered about the way that um, San Francisco chose to blitz right at the end. Blitzing Mahomes doesn't work. You know, it doesn't work any more than blitzing Brady does. So why were they suddenly blitzing there? Was it just desperation? No, I just said that those are things that make me wonder. On the other hand, um, you know, now that we're sponsoring a professional soccer team, Castalia Library, um, I know it's not, I see similar decisions being made from time to time out of stubbornness, you know. Um, Savage Bear says, been a Ravens fan since I was 13. I was really confused to see them barely run the ball. Yeah, that does make you suspicious, but then you realize that, oh, they've got a plan to fool them, you know. And and also, uh, that KC rush defense wasn't that poor last night. They held the leading rusher in the league to 80 yards on 22 carries. So, you know, um, I mean, certainly the coaches know a lot of stuff that we don't. But I've seen, like I said, I've seen professional coaches making deeply questionable decisions that make no sense, um, from my perspective. So uh, when you combine the difficulty of you know arranging for that, you know, when someone's already getting paid millions a year, are they really going to be willing to play along? You know, I don't know. It's possible. It's possible in a way that the full scripted approach is not. But again, given that we see the same thing in sports and leagues that are not possibly scripted, I think it's easier to stick with it. Ferris Bluer Bear says, "Trust the game plan." I don't know. I don't follow sports ball. I'm I'm just gonna let that one go. Um, now obviously there is nothing can be as successful as the NFL without being corrupted and all that sort of thing. Where do we see that? We obviously see that in the halftime show. I think that's where it is. Um, I think that that's uh, and if it's there, then there's a reasonably good chance that it's not necessarily penetrating the game to the extent that a lot of people think so. Has a coach or player ever been charged with throwing a game? Not any time in the past, I don't know, 60, 70 years that I'm aware of. Now, the NFL used to crack down. I mean, they used to be death on gambling. They're still harsh on the players. One player got suspended for an entire season last year just because he uh, gambled on some football games online that he wasn't involved with. So, um, Pigeon says, "Hey Vox, I have a question when you're taking super chats." Well, we only have super chats on the unauthorized, but you can ask the question now. Although I have to address this question first. What is the greatest quarterback performance in a Super Bowl in your opinion? Um, well, I think you have to go with Tom Brady second half against Atlanta. You um, you know, or you could also go with Doug Williams the second quarter against Denver. That was unbelievable. I mean, it really looked like Denver was going to run away with the game, and then all of a sudden, Doug Williams just starts throwing bombs. So, um, so if I was going to pick a quarter, I would definitely say uh, Doug Williams the second quarter against Denver, playing for the Redskins. Uh, for a half, I'd say Tom Brady against the Falcons. For the entire game, I think you'd have to go with when I think it was Steve Young and um, San Francisco, San Diego is one possibility, but there's also who was it? Washington absolutely the Redskins absolutely curb stomped something. It was like 55-10. That was that was pretty impressive too. But Steve Young, San Francisco, San Diego might do it. You know. Let's see here. The Madden era was a lot of fun when Montana was at his prime. Yeah, that was good. The Drive. No, I don't. I would. I mean, when you're rating something, just one drive does not do it for me. Um, I think what we can guarantee is that major sports will ramp up their crossover with Hollywood. I don't think so. Hollywood is becoming increasingly irrelevant. If anything, um, the entertainment industry is trying to get in with the NFL. You know, um, and since we're talking conspiracy, I think uh, I think it's much more likely that um, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey are more of a more likely to be a marriage of convenience than anything else. Yeah, I was going to say the drive is not the Super Bowl either. So um, I can't remember the last time anyone I know went to a movie. Yeah, exactly. It's Hollywood is not important enough to for the NFL to bother with it. You um, they're focused on growing internationally themselves, while Hollywood has destroyed its international market. So um, I I, th- I think the NFL looks at Hollywood and laughs. So um, I mean, obviously like the celebrity stuff for the Super Bowl and that sort of thing, just because it helps bring in the non-fans. But I think the NFL learned its lesson, which is don't ignore your core in favor of expanding to new fans. So, um, will the NFL branch out to Mexico first? No, I don't think so. Um, you know, Sports ball is not scripted. It's yes and improvisational suggestion led, even gayer. To be honest, I don't think there's anything more gay um, than referring to sports as sports ball. To be honest, I think that most young men need more sports in their life, not less. Um, I think it's pretty obvious who can and who can't catch a ball. And I think that a lack of sports, especially in youth, is one of the primary um, ways to produce gammas. So, um, yeah, they're pushing. Ladumba says they've noticed the popularity of NFL has grown a lot in Sweden. Yeah, it's getting big in England. The fact that they got flag football into the Olympics is pretty big. If I was a bit younger, I would probably be looking to join a flag football team about now. Um, if I wasn't still able to play soccer, I'd probably be looking for a flag football team. Um, but yet, not many Swedes follow the Vikings. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. You need to straighten that out, Ladumba. I mean, there's a lot of problems with Sweden, but that's clearly one of them. Um, you know, I mean, I understand you don't want people to be completely focused on sitting around in front of the TV, but uh, we always watched the games, went out and played at halftime. The problem isn't that you're watching the game. The problem is that you're watching the halftime show. Just my opinion. So, anyhow, that's enough about about the Super Bowl. I do have something to show you, which I think you're going to enjoy, especially Castalia history subscribers. So, we had a real challenge trying to come up with a cover for the landmark Thucydides. And so we thought, well, the actual landmark Thucydides has this cool map in the background, and so we started trying to work with that. But um, but I like the compass. I like the markers around the thing, but we're like, okay, this is really not working much. Anyhow, after 7 or 8 back and forth iterations, we finally came up with this, and I think you'll agree that that is going to be one attractive monster book. It's actually we wanted to do something special because it's the first Castalia Library book. And so it's got the Castalia History Lego Ergo Scio, or technically Ergo Scio, I suppose, logo for Castalia History at the top. The landmark Thucydides, History of the Peloponnesian War. So it's got a Spartan helmet and a Spartan shield with crossed swords behind it. The lambda is something that you often see on the Spartan shields. It stands for Laconia. Laconia was Sparta was the city. Laconia was the region that they represented. And then we, as you can see, we cleaned up the lines on the map. And I had said, hey, well, we could just put a text box on it, kind of like they had on the original. And our production editor really took that and ran with it, and it came up with a very Grecian architecture look. And just if you're thinking, that kind of looks a bit short and stumpy, that's just because it's huge. That spine is 2 inches wide. It's a 752 page book. It's absolutely massive. We're gonna put it up for sale. We actually did, because it's the first one, we knew that there was going to be a high level of interest in it, even for non-subscribers. So we're going to be putting it up for independent sale as soon as we have a date that it's going to be bound. I'm told that it's going to be bound on March 8th. So I think we can actually go ahead and put it up for sale. So if you're not subscribed to history, you might want to consider it. We are going to permit those who are Castalia Library subscribers, but not history subscribers, to get the usual discount. So now, of course, history books cost a little bit more, so it's going to be more than just $100 for it, but you won't have to pay the full retail either. I would highly, if you are collecting the books, I would highly recommend that you consider buying one, because there's only about, at most, 200 extra. And so I think that there's going to be a real high level of interest in it, just like there was with the missionaries. If you want to have a complete collection of Castalia history, or even just some of the more significant releases, that's probably going to be one of them. And I can tell you, just as a huge fan of the Landmark series, I've got all the landmarks, Arian, Caesar, etc., etc. They are fantastic interiors, and we've got it the exact interior, but printed out on archival paper. So it's a fantastic book. I was worried about the cover, especially when the medieval history, the two Cambridges turned out so well. But now that we've got that nailed down and delivered, and the stamp is being manufactured, I'm actually even more excited about that than I am about the medieval histories. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet to the Castalia Library Substack, you might want to consider doing so. Not only are we using that to put up, like, for example, tomorrow we'll put that cover up on the Castalia Library site, but we're also serializing studies on the Napoleonic Wars, which I don't know if any of you have been following that yet, but I think you're understanding why we chose that book for the fourth history book. It's so good. I mean, it's so good. And just in terms of content. And so, I'm really pleased with how that's going. And I think you're all going to be very pleased when we announce the next library book on the 1st of March. So anyhow, thanks for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you at the next Darkstream. This is the Darkstream. I'm Vox Day.